spinning. Oh, we are live. Welcome back to another episode of Talking with Branders. I guess today, Lynn, we can consider this Branders on the road because I'm in California, not in my home studio, and you're in Massachusetts, not in New York. So welcome to
Mhm.
the road show.
Yeah, Branders to go. I'm I'm here for it all.
Lynn Altman, you are a powerhouse in the branding community. We're talking 20 plus years in the business, founder and president of Brand Now. You're author, you have poignant things to say, you have opinions, you have strategy backing you. Tell us who you are, where you come from, and how we got to here today.
Right. Well, that's quite the introduction, which I really appreciate. And my career started out. I'm going on 30 years as an
Shit.
agency owner, which
Wow.
when I count it back, I really can't imagine. And this is the second business I've had. The first one was founded in 1995, and
Wow.
I had
Okay.
met while I was in my 20s and trying to find a job in New York and trying to find my way. I was introduced to someone named Joe Viverito. He was a 60-year-old dude who I thought was like a big ad guy, and he kind of was. But he had some ideas about how best to innovate new products and brands. And I think people considered him a bit of a kind of an absent-minded professor, but I was too
Mm,
young to know that. And so what he believed in and what I still subscribe to is like, you can do things faster, and doing them faster makes them better. So we started cold calling and uh, pitching this, 10 days to the new products or brands you want. And the first client that said yes was Pepsi. And then it just kind of snowballed from
What
there.
year is this? What year is this that
This is
Pepsi said
19
yes to you?
this was 1995. Um, we had this thing where we would try to call people and executives. We had like the lists of everyone's name and number, and we'd cold call, and we'd try to call before or after business hours when people's assistants weren't around, because we knew if you
Mm,
could get through to the voicemail, there's a better chance that they would listen to your message. So
sure.
we were skirting the gatekeepers, and we went in with a kind of a dog and pony show of case histories, things he had worked on, not necessarily things I had worked on. But the client did not know she was our first client.
Mm,
And there's a woman named April Thornton. I'll give her a shout out. But we left that meeting, and once we'd gotten the project, and I said to Joe, if I ever write a book, I'm gonna dedicate it to April Thornton. And 12 years later, in 2006, I wrote a book called Brand It Yourself, and I dedicated it to her. And I sent her a copy in the mail and said, read the dedication, where I confessed that she was our first client. And so she and I luckily have been in touch ever since. And incidentally, our second client was Merrill Lynch. And recently, I just reconnected with that client because she goes to the same synagogue as my parents.
huh,
So,
wow. I mean, if anyone's listening and you don't think that cold emailing doesn't work, rewind this episode and start from the beginning because obviously it does work, right? That's an
mhm.
incredible startup story.
Well, and it was amazing that once we had one or two projects under our belt, we really said, I think we're onto something. This notion of speed, of acceleration, of getting to the meat of what clients want without a lot of circumstance. And so Joe and I stayed together as a business for 12 years. And in 2007, we were just at different points. Again, he had started out in his
Yeah.
60s, I had started in my 20s. And so now I was kind of ready to fly. And I also saw that there were other things to do besides how we were doing them. So we had like a product, we had something as a company that you bought into 10 days, you got 10 to 15 concepts, here's how much it cost. And everyone kind of just went through that product. And what I had realized, or what I had believed, was that there were other things that we could do. There were parts of the process, whether it be ideation or concept development or strategy, that could be pulled apart, or we didn't always have to deliver our output in one form. We
Yeah.
could tailor it to like what the clients, how they
Mm.
were testing it and what they were doing with it. So that's when I went out on my own in 2007 as Brand Now.
I mean, mid 90s, getting into branding, why? Like, what happened What happened to you growing up that you got into branding?
Well, it's funny. I was an English major, and so like this was the
Ah,
ultimate liberal arts job. And even as a kid, I remember my dad saying like, "I don't know what job," because I said I wanted to be in advertising or roller derby. So maybe branding is like exactly the intersection of, you know, competitive, driven, and communications. He said, "So I don't know what job is out there for you, but you will find it." And I think me, and I thought I was trying to go into advertising, but there was something about how strategic and creative you really had to be in branding. And actually, we started out very much in the innovation world. And in the mid 90s, as you remember, the internet happened. And I always feel
mm,
so old when I say like the internet happened, but people started saying, oh, we need a brand. That was like a really big buzzword
mm.
back then. And so we realized that the process that we had for innovation could also be used for positioning, for creating brands, for creating names for products and searching URLs. And so we had pivoted how the same approach could be applied to different challenges. And so
Sure.
even this similar approach has been used to build new programs for companies or referral marketing initiatives or communications pieces, because it's all about finding these different strategies and hypotheses and playing them out with very smart consumers and then bringing them to
Mm.
life.
You have a couple interesting points of view on the changing consumer behaviors. Now,
Yeah.
being in the business for 30 years, I mean, what are these changing views?
Well, I mean, it used to be, well, again, like thinking of back when I started, like even looking at one category, like beverage, like there was soda and then there's carbonated soft drinks and non-carbonated soft drinks. Those were the categories.
Yeah.
And then bottled water came along, and then which we worked on both with Aquafina and Dasani, which at different points. And it was like, oh, there's 700 brands of water. What do we do about that? How do we get ours to stand out and sound different? A clear liquid, yeah, a clear bottle, a clear liquid in a clear bottle. And now when you look at the beverage landscape, there are so many categories. So I think one of the things that's really changed is the amount of choice that consumers have. The
Yeah.
stores have gotten bigger. There's emerging brands, there's established brands, there's D2C brands, there's just brands everywhere, and they come and go much more quickly. And then there's influencer brands. I mean, it's almost like consumers have this realm of choice that, again, we
Yeah.
know it can be paralyzing and like very frenetic. And at the same time, we've all been watching AI take over the world, or take over a lot of our choices. And we're seeing more and more that consumers are giving up their choices for AI's choices and taking out the human element of how they shop, or really listening very heavily to what AI is telling them they should buy.
Why is that? Like, what do you think the psychology is? Is it because there's so many choices out there and we just need to be told what to do? Like, what is
I,
it?
well, I think that's a great theory. I've never thought of it in that way, but I do think there is something to, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know which drink I want, or I don't know which is the best one. I think we're in a culture of optimization too, so everyone
Mm,
wants to make sure that if they are gonna make a
everyone.
choice, that it's the best one and the smartest one. And we've been told that AI knows everything, and so why not ask AI,
Right, right,
like, where
right.
I should go on vacation? And, it was interesting, someone well, I was gonna say the irony is that and people are learning this, but not really acting on it, that AI still doesn't make as really good decisions as humans do. And so I was running a roundtable at the Wall Street Journal Future of Food conference a few months ago, and I had asked everyone at the table, like, where has AI shopped for you recently? Like, tell me what happened. And one woman told this story of she and her son-in-law were both helping her daughter look for a new TV for their new home. And as an experiment, one went on Chat GPT, one went on Claude, and they both did their research, like as to research which was the best TV. And both platforms came up with the same recommendation, the same store, and the same recommendation, the same model. And so they went to the Best Buy, their local Best Buy, and said, "Okay, here's the one we want." And they went, you have to go through an associate there. And the associate said, well, why are you picking this one? They explained why. And he said, well, what kind of things do you like to watch? And they said, oh, we like to watch horror movies. He said, oh, that TV is horrible for horror movies. The way the colors are, it's oversaturated. And he showed them a side by side between the one they had come in to pick and the one that he would recommend, showed a horror movie on both screens. And they said, oh my gosh, you're right. And so we've given this choice and we feel good about the choices, but the choices are still just based on customer reviews, on Reddit posts, on reviews that, like, who knows if they're true or not, who knows if
On
you are.
AEO, right? Like, I mean, now search is, and even advertising is making its way into the LLMs. And so now can we really trust them, or are they just selling to us in a non-discrete way, or in a discrete way?
Right. Well, and also now brands are really rushing, and a lot of our clients are rushing to optimize their algorithm to be selected for
Yeah.
by the LLMs when it comes to either people asking Instacart to fill their cart, or, one of the next waves we're keeping an eye on is just
Yeah.
agent to agent shopping, where the agent
That's right.
just, you say, you build an agent, and I've tried this in chat GPT, and you say, I want to spend this much on groceries in this neighborhood. Here's what I like to eat. Go shopping for me, fill my cart, and buy it. And so it's understandable that brands are trying to be discovered in that way, but it's such a different landscape than what we've been used to.
Right. Well, this is a great segue into what we're putting together for Branders Fest 2026 under survival, right? Like, brands, we're at a tipping point. Like, the line in the sand has been drawn, and either brands are going to survive this paradigm shift in consumer behaviors and brand building and advertising, or the weak ones are going to be really exposed and they're going to die off. And are you feeling like this tension as well in the world?
I'm feeling the tension. I have a little bit more optimism for it.
Tell
In
us.
some ways, for the enterprise brand, they have the muscle to probably weather a lot of the storms. But for a lot of the startup and emerging brands, I think in some ways it levels some of the playing field, that if they have access, which AI does, like, gives everyone some amount of access to similar information and technology, to say, how do I get discovered? How do I get in people's carts? How do I get, besides doing an influencer campaign, which, talk about decay of trust, we're seeing that there
Right.
in social channels. How do I get into this new channel? I think the more interesting part for me, or one of the more interesting parts for me, is like, what happens when brands do get discovered by AI and they end up in people's homes, and then what? And people are thinking about the discovery part, but they're not really thinking about the fact that now you have this third party data, and brands have lost their connection to their consumers and their audiences.
Mm,
And how do you close that loop so that you have that connection with the people who are buying you, and you maintain it? Because it's only going to be, another week before someone else's algorithm
that's
beats
right.
yours out.
Well, you said something, and I'm not here to challenge, but I'm curious on your perspective. You said enterprise can weather the storm. Yes. But do you think enterprise is slower to adapt because of all the layers of bureaucracy? Because AI is moving so quick?
I think they're slower to adapt. Well, this might be talking out of turn, but not only are they slower to adapt, but I don't think they're trying not to be. So they have these mandates, they have these very complex systems, and then they have mandates. I'm hearing this from a lot of people in enterprise businesses, that, we have to use AI 5 times a day, and we have to prove it and demonstrate that we're using it, which isn't the best way to use AI. So
Right.
to just say use it, because people then will use it for writing an
Bullshit.
email or a
Yeah.
LinkedIn, but yeah.
Wasting tokens just because they have to waste tokens or use them
Right. So
up.
I think they'll be slower to adopt, but I think they have some of the funding and the relationships and the channels,
Yeah.
that they might have their lunch eaten a little bit, but when they figure it out, they will be able to. I mean, it's just they're just so big. I hate to
Yeah.
say they're too big to fail, because we know that's not true. We've seen brands come and go all the time. But I think they will figure it out in a way that will keep them. Again, there
Yeah.
will probably be some collateral damage for sure, but I think they'll figure it out.
But with any great revolution within business, whether it was, in the industrial revolution or the internet, or, like, there's always going to be collateral damage fallout. There's always going to be the brands that scale so quickly, and then, like Katy Perry's fireworks just explodes
Mhm.
into nothingness. And this goes into something that you talk about. And actually, I come from this school too, about failing fast. I was at an agency many years ago, and our mantra was launch fast, fail faster, adapt the fastest, or some shit. It was a long, it was a three-peat like that. Tell me your perspective on this notion of a brand failing fast, because I don't think brands want to fail, but it's almost like you're giving them permission to, as long as your bounce back rate is quicker.
Right, and it's, different companies of different sizes have different uh tolerant different levels of tolerance for failing, but I have found, and especially, and this is where AI can really come in handy,
Mm,
because you can do shorter launches, more regional launches, D2C launches, Amazon only launches. You can take a concept, and as long as you can find a partner, whether it's food and beverage or financial services, whoever you are, if you can find a way to do these limited runs and limited trials and get it out there and say, how are consumers responding? Let's introduce this as an LTO, as a limited time offer, and get some real time response instead of hypothetical response. Because I'm sure a lot of companies, they will spend 9 months, a year thinking about something, testing it,
yeah,
retesting it, optimizing it, and it is true, like, a lot of companies, again, if you're working with a Costco or a Walmart or a Target, it's expensive for
yeah,
your stocking and the shelf space, and so those are risky bets that you have to make sure you have in year one, a multi-million dollar idea, so I understand that. But with AI, there are ways, and I was just speaking with someone today, like in the snack food and beverage world, where you can do tests in convenience stores on a regional
mm,
level and day by day see real-time sales, real-time movement, what flavor is performing the best. And why not spend $50,000 for 6 months doing that and
yeah.
see where the traction is and keep expanding? Or if it's not, move on. Well, I listened to another podcast once, and they said, if you move a dog's water dish, like, even a dog after 2 days stops going to the old spot to find their food or their water. And
Yeah,
so I think failure is a great testing ground, and you always learn something from it,
yeah.
and you can always
I
move forward from it.
always, and to that point, CPG, we're talking sampling, we're talking failing fast. I spent, I'd say, 2.5 years or so when I was at an agency. I was working with Curiosity out of Cincinnati. I spent leading the Dude Wipes team, the Dude Wipes strategy, for their first national campaign, and talking about
Mhm.
sampling and CPG and testing waters, especially within retail. This is how they've been able to. I mean, they for a while, because they were a Mark Cuban brand, like, they decided to do like bidets and other thing, and this is like 2017, 2018, and Cuban was like, you make butt wipes, you make that, just stick with that, right? And since then, talk about the category, toilet paper category. Now they're making all these different scents and these different, one time, limited time, drops or whatever, and they're killing it in the category because of that mentality. And I think so much of what you're saying, Lynn, goes back to the mindset of the brand from the get go. In your experience, do certain kind of founders have a pedigree or a DNA that, like, just is different than, like successful founders that understand the changing consumer behaviors and understand all the
Mhm.
things we're talking about? Is there a different pedigree with them? Like, what's your take?
And it's hard to put all founders in one basket, and you hear all of these great, the founders I've met and the founder stories. I do want to say, by the way, Dude Wipes, I remember when that brand came out and I loved it. I was like, this is just baby wipes repositioned for a dude. And, like, I watched the
Brilliant.
dudes in my life at the Ragnar relays and all of the
Yeah,
endurance challenges, just going like, oh, Dude Wipes. So great. And also just a
so good.
reminder of like some of the best brands and some of the best innovations just take something that is familiar and turn it around for someone else. We already
That's
know
it.
it works here. How do we refresh it and make it work somewhere else? So I've
So,
always
bro, I
been a
mean,
fan of that.
Liquid Death, right? Liquid Death, another crazy, amazing example of repositioning fucking water. It's
In a
3
can.
billion years old. It hasn't changed, right? But it's a brilliant move.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But as far as founders goes, I was just talking to someone about this very recently, because some founders are very much like, this is my vision. I know what it needs to be. I am not changing my vision for anyone, no matter what feedback I get. And we always hear these success stories of people who just hold on to their idea, and no matter what, they persevere and they succeed, and that is an admirable trait. And then we also see other founders who try a bunch of stuff and fail and keep looking and trying and adjusting. And I would argue that those are the people that find more success. I've met more successful founders in that realm. And
mm,
like, in some ways I'm a founder, and myself included. Like, every time I have what I've heard called an idea bomb, like, hey guys, let's try this. And it almost never is successful in the way that I've tried it initially, but it always leads me down a path to learn something new and say, like, even when AI started happening, to say, okay, team, we need to get more, figure out how to incorporate AI into our process or into our business. And one of our ideas, and I paid someone to do it, was to build us an AI brand diagnostic tool that people could
mm.
try for free or pay a little bit for, and they'd ask some questions, and then we would give them, like, here's your brand health, and here's what's working, and here. And, like, I can't say that it was more sophisticated or even sophisticated at all, or even better than what ChatGPT or I could, what ChatGPT could tell you. But it did get me learning what AI could do, what its
Yeah,
limitations are, where we could use it. So even though that was a failure, I would say it wasn't.
sure. We all build. I'm guilty of it. I've written about it exhaustively on my Substack that I have spent so much time and so much money building bullshit MVPs on AI, thinking that it was going to be this game changing thing when it was just a waste of everything. But the learning lessons is actually what I think is making me dangerous now to consult on AI, because I've spent woken up at 2 a.m. because my tokens restarted at that moment on Claude, and I needed, you know what I mean? Like, you do these weird things. I think it's really interesting, and this poses a really good question, Lynn. And it's around brand loyalty, and I'm going to bring it back to, we had David Acker on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and he obviously the chairman of brand loyalty. Now with the world of AI, right? Like, agents, now there's all these cheaper options out there. And is the consumer catching on? Not sure, that question mark. So how are we building brand loyalty in the age of AI? It's kind of keeping me up at night, because it's a quick race to the bottom of everything.
Well, and that's where I feel like there's a real blind spot for brands in terms of how to, especially if the agent is doing the picking. And when you think about, like, what DoorDash does to consumer data, they hold on to it, not the restaurants. And so if we make that same parallel, so the brands are no longer having the same access to consumer data that they used to, because there's a new party who's owning that transaction.
Mm-hmm.
How do brands get that loyalty back, or even plant it in the first place, since the consumer didn't originally make the selection for the brand? And that's where I think, on the back end, the package and in real life experiences
Yeah.
can really fuel those. So I see this all the time. Packages have this small QR code on them, and if you go on it, 9 times out of 10 it goes back to the website.
What a waste.
What a waste. Why has no one besides us, put, or I'm sure not no one, but, like, we've put a lot of thought into, like, what could your package do to create that
Yeah.
loyalty? What could that QR code do that would really entice and motivate and compel a consumer to make a connection back with the brand is, beyond, sure, a coupon is great, but there's a whole world of programs, of engagement, of information, of value, of meaning that brands know how to create for consumers. They just haven't thought about it in this way. Or similarly, and I mentioned this to the founder of Athletic Brewing. I don't know if he
Oh,
took me up on it or not, but I said, have you ever, considered local run clubs? Like, I first came across Athletic
yeah.
Brewing at Ragnar's. So like they're sponsoring these communities, but they're not actually directly communicating. Like he doesn't know that
Hmm.
I've seen his brand since at many different events, but like why not create some team t-shirts and have the Athletic Brewing Run Club, and you have an ambassador in New York,
That's right.
the West Village Run Club, and then we become ambassadors for the brand. We're loyal to it. Another, NA beer comes out and we're like, no, we've got our brand. And
Right.
I'm finding that there are all of these opportunities for brands to connect again on these it doesn't have to be these large scales. It can be these very regional, I hate to say consumer by consumer, but smaller groups that, again, in the age of AI shopping, and also kind of the influencer backlash that we're seeing, that getting more and more people to be your ambassadors in I hate the word authentic, but in an authentic way or in a
Yeah.
meaningful way is really important. And your package can do so much to help facilitate that it's just not doing it. It's really a unmined opportunity.
I think there's like 2 points that are not buried. I mean, they're on the surface, but like just to call them out for everyone watching and listening. Um, Community is community the moat these days. Like this is the moat that we all kind of, whether you're a personal brand or an enterprise brand, like being able to create a community of ambassadors, of people who want to create on your behalf, people who want to talk about your brand on your behalf. Like that is what I think we all should be searching for.
Mhm.
I think that becomes, to your point, the athletic brewing, it's actually really smart, right? And it's not even like New York City. It's west. It's like block by block. Like I live right on the outskirts of Philadelphia. Like it's so neighborhood, and like South Philly has South Philly brands, and they're killing it there. And they probably aren't in North Philly, but they know where their little pockets of demographics are. They know where their people are, and they just engage in real life. And this is another reason
Mhm.
why, as Branders Magazine and Branders Media, we're doing Branders Fest, right? Like, how do we? It's one thing to do these conversations. It's another thing to have a magazine and to do social, but like to get people in a room together who share common thoughts and common values, man, like thank
Mhm.
God COVID happened sometimes because it really illuminated how important this is.
Well, and I think you nailed it. I think community is increasingly more valued and valuable, which is hard because some people feel like it's an intangible. But if we know that brand loyalty and brand ambassadorship has value, then community is the place to find it. Because, and we're seeing this in Gen Z and Gen Alpha, that they're really missing those in real life experiences. And even though, yes, we had, what was it, like meetup.com, or these others,
Right.
these other created communities, I think I see it in my life, like finding these pockets, these local pockets where, I have a yoga community and a run community and a local CPG community in New
Yeah.
York, and the Branders magazine community, which I'm so grateful to be a part of. It's so nice to just have a familiar place to go that you feel like you belong, that you
Yeah.
can connect with other people. And it's not easy to do, but it's easier than going out of business and not having not having it.
Well, that is so true, and to the small businesses out there that are engaging with us here, like listen to what Lynn is saying. Like create events, create reason to get together. And I live in a small town right outside of a big city, right? And I'm fortunate in that sense. And we have a studio, and the studio allows us to connect with a lot of creators and influencers, and it's amazing how the more online we get, the more I'm feeling the pull. I had, and case in point, yesterday we had a local South Jersey, Philadelphia influencer ask us to do a live podcast on his first annual cornhole tournament happening in Wildwood on Labor Day. So here we have an online community with 200,000 followers across all platforms saying, I want to do something in real life where I'm not going to make any money, but I'm going to be making memories. Right. And I think that's beautiful.
Well, and I think it's so valuable. And you find in those moments of community that's where the real loyalty lies. And it's something that, and then you invite other people into it. There's a community I joined in the past year called the Well Network. It's a relatively new CPG community. And I just went to one of their events this week. And every time you go to an event, you see a few people and then you meet a few new people. And then every time it builds upon itself. The community builds, the ties build. And it's so nice as a person in the world to have these spaces of belonging. And if you can imagine as a brand or a business that you are a space of belonging for people, they will keep going to you again and again and again. And I mean, even in my business, a lot of times when I'm networking, I don't want to sell to people. I just want to enjoy other people's company, because I know if I like them and they like me, we will find a common ground down the road. And so when I go to network, I never sell. I just want to know people, learn about them, find our connections, and maybe the connections will go somewhere. Maybe they won't. That's okay. The worst thing that happens is I have a new connection. So even this morning I'm in Boston, I had some coffee with someone who I worked with at Gillette in 2006. And she and I have stayed in touch since 2006, have never worked together since that day. And it doesn't matter because it's great. I like her. We like each other. And so
it's the branding community.
Yeah.
Like all of us here, we're all contributing, we're all sharing common thoughts, and we're all wanting to move our craft forward, and we build camaraderie. And I think that that's so good. And one of the things, because you're coming from the CPG world, right? And you mentioned Gillette, you're mentioning all these consumer brands, and I sometimes feel like they almost have it harder sometimes to be sincere in the age of, you did mention Gen Alpha and Gen Z, and I know that they're almost don't advertise to me at all. I see through that. But you have these big brands that they have to advertise. And so what do you think is going through some of those brand managers or the CBO, the chief brand officer at these giant companies? What's going through their mind?
Well, I think it's things they've seen before. I think well, I've seen them address this problem a few different ways over the years. And so back, I would say in the early aughts, I hate sounding like, back in my day, but back in the early aughts, when startup brands were starting to gain popularity, it was always about the founder's story that was driving the brand. And so the larger brands were trying to figure out ways to create their own version of a founder's story. And they'd say the scientists at, our company, or the food creators really like this. And so that never quite worked because people didn't really care as much. And so then they said, okay, we're just going to start acquiring these brands because we know we can't do it. And so we'll start with acquisitions. And then they said, well, if we're acquiring these brands, why don't we just incubate them and build them ourselves? And so then there was an era where, Pepsi, General Mills, Campbell's, everyone had their Mondelez, everyone had their incubation. And that didn't really work because they didn't have the patience that founders do to keep, to do anything under a certain level of revenue and sales in the first year. And so now they're back to acquisitions. And so I think it's really hard for them to make those connections in authentic ways. And I think they do rely on the brands and the founders that do have that connection and then bring them in. And what's happening, and now we're seeing it too, is by the time they get that big, then Gen Z and Gen Alpha are already on to something else. And so it's a cycle they haven't quite figured out. I love that we have a special guest appearance.
So talking about Gen Alpha.
Yeah, he's like, I'm here for it all.
Okay, can you go ask Winona real quick? I love you, pal. We'll go in the pool in a second, okay? Uh,
Pool waits for no one. Well, they
pool
do too.
waits. Lynn, we were in the pool. My mother's got a beautiful pool. We were in the pool until like 9 o'clock last night almost. 6:30 this morning. He was like, "Can we go back in the pool?" And I was like, "Why not? Why? Who am I to say no? We're on vacation, homie."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say also, like, yeah, listen. It's actually in some ways a great lesson. Like, listen to what people want. Listen to what people are telling you. I think one of the problems that the big brands
Mm,
are facing, they have the right idea. They're looking at TikTok, for example, and seeing like how consumers and how these generations are taking their products and reinventing them. I just posted about the Skittles, freeze-dried Skittles.
right.
And they're saying, well, people are doing this at home, we can do this. But by the time they get around to doing it, then consumers have already moved on to something else. And so, how do you speed that up? How do you speed up either the trend that consumers are doing before, getting those signals from the future and finding it after only a few thousand people are doing it and not a few million? Or how do you listen to what they're saying in ways that are smart to say, oh, people keep complaining that, I don't know, Skittles are too chewy. I don't know if anyone would say Skittles are too chewy, but
Right.
how do we get ahead of the trend or see if you see that people are doing freeze dried Skittles and you are not Skittles, but another brand, you might say, well, if people are doing it over here, how does this trend, how can I start do a new version of it for my
Yeah.
product and my brand?
Right.
Why
Right.
haven't we tried gummy vitamins, for example? Like what's that next evolution that can still create that sense of newness for consumers? Because I think that's really what they're looking for. I mean, in all innovation and all branding is some amount of novelty and freshness. It's scientifically proven that like we find joy in novelty. That's why you're happier on your first 2 days of vacation and discovering, and not like day six
Right.
when you're like,
Right.
oh, I've been to the pool 100 times now.
I mean, it's like
And
relationships. It's why the newness of a relationship is the honeymoon phase, and then after 10 years of whatever, it's like, all right, go take a hike. No, I'm kidding.
yeah, and some alone time would be good. It's true. And so how do
Yeah,
brands like keep that honeymoon spark alive? Either, through new products, through messaging, through engagement, I think is really important.
you we're talking about social listening here, and one of the things going back to Dude Wives, they kill it on social because they I'm a philosophy nerd. So Zeno of Cyntium, right, and a Stoic philosopher said, "We have two ears and one mouth for a reason. Act accordingly." Right. But brands should also act accordingly. Brands should have two ears and one mouth, right, and like listen to what your audience is saying. And it's not just like don't just do a survey, but like what are people talking about on social? Like what is that zeitgeist that underneath it all is being chattered? I think when brands can figure that out, I don't know. Marty Newmeyer always talks about it during when I went through his level C program. Like they're going to tell you what they want. All we have to do is listen to them and have an open heart, open mind, and
Mhm.
an open dialogue. And they're going to tell you the product and tell you how to sell it to them. And what's your take on that
Well, I
philosophy?
was gonna say, I believe it. I think that's the second time this week that I've had that quote come up in
Oh
conversation, by the
wow,
way. So I've been listening a lot to it. My
synchronicity.
ears have been working. But I think the mistake people make is only listening to the social chatter about their brand
Right.
and
Not
saying,
the
well, what
adjacent, not the yeah.
not the adjacent, like, why not we listen to another category? Why don't, if we're talking to women, and candy for, I don't know, I'm still on candy, why aren't we listening to how women talk about their relationships or how they talk
Yeah.
about their fitness routine or how they talk about their nightly routine? Like, why are we only listening to what we want to hear? That's why everyone's coming out with the same answers all the time. But when you start to broaden your scope and say, well, they're saying this in candy, but they're also saying this in nutrition and wellness, like, where is this new space that they can come
Mm.
together? And again, that's where like really refreshing ideas and thoughts and things that are newsworthy, groundbreaking, compelling for consumers can come from. So sometimes you have to look beyond where you think the answers will be.
And it goes back to, and I forget who said this. Maybe it was also Marty, but like just when we look at branding and building brand, it really becomes a game of categories. And sure, if you're selling candy, and you're selling to women, yeah, you are a candy brand, but maybe there's a different word that you can use, right? Maybe you put in the wellness word, or maybe you just carve out a whole new thing because you're seeing what the adjacent category is saying in this category. And as a good strategist, our job is to see the dots that most can't see and then fucking connect them.
Well, that's what's so fun about brand and especially innovation strategy, is to say, here's where you are now. And this is where a lot of founders, I would have to say, get it wrong in terms of the failing fast, where they just see shiny new things, or they have an idea and they say, let's just go do it without a plan of like, what is this new product or this new campaign going to do? And where do I want it to take me to? But if you say, here's where I am now, even as Dude Wipes, and you say, are we a butt brand, or are we a wipe brand? Are we a cleansing brand, or are we a hygiene brand? And when you start
Right.
to make those definitions in the sand and say, where's our strategy taking us? Then it allows you to say, okay, if we're a butt brand, we go into
We're not going to do deodorant.
hemorrhoids. Yeah, we're not going to do.
We had that conversation.
Or are we a paper goods brand? And what does that trajectory look like? Or are we a men's grooming brand?
That's right.
And those conversations can really steer you. There's no shortage of ideas. There's no shortage of ways to innovate. Ideas, for better or worse, can be considered a commodity, but it's what you do with them and how you wield them and how you help them grow your brand. That's really the power. And having a plan is so key to that.
Especially in the
Also,
age of AI. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I also never thought I'd say, are you a butt brand as a sentence on a podcast, but glad I did.
I believe Dude Wipes is just checking their boxes. They're like, we're the ultimate butt brand. And it's funny because I remember this in having the conversations, like they decide there was a time period when they were looking at deodorants, and they were looking like, do we go after the Harry's market? Do we go after the Dr. Sasquatch or Dr. Squatch or whatever it is? And I remember the story that Sean, the CEO, was telling us about a conversation he was having with Mark Cuban, being like, you sell butt wipes, just fucking do it. And luckily they kept that mentality because COVID was so good to them. Right? COVID, you could say it was luck, but it was just opportunity meets preparedness. It was that right moment. And now they're selling 1 million a day or some shit like that. Like they are just absolutely killing it. And and it's all about that, is positioning and owning that category. And it's so, and I feel like because you're so involved in the CPG world, that CPG especially, like it is so cutthroat. And if you're not, if you let a day lag without thinking about differentiation and how you're going to continue, like you can be behind. Do you feel that?
I do feel that. And I do want to circle back to something that you were saying about Dude Wipes, which is another thing that I find myself talking about a lot, which is getting people to ask for you by name. And so Dude Wipes created the category that is now the category. People don't say like, I need a wipe. I need a dude wipe, and they know it's different than a wet one or different from, any other wipe. And so it makes a lot of sense. So if you're going into agentic shopping, you're going to say, I buy me Dude Wipes. You're not going to say, buy me a
flushable wipe. Yeah.
A flushable, moisturized wipe. And so once you realize that it's their name, it's the category, it's like, of course, Dude Wipes should stay in wipes because that's they've created the whole category essentially. And so then when you think about room for innovation, like flushable wipes, non-flushable wipes, thicker wipes, thinner wipes, scented wipes, benefit wipes, like the runway is still really long as Dude Wipes.
Yeah.
Before, and then you could maybe it's creams, or, maybe there's something else down the road, but there may not be a need to, because there's so many opportunities in exactly what they are. And they have mastered, I think Spindrift has done the same thing. Spindrift, for some reason, their combination of like juice to sparkling water.
It's the real fruit. It's that real fruit.
You can't say, I want a real fruit sparkling beverage. If you want a Spindrift, you have to ask for it by name. And so the more that your product creates the category, and the more that your name and your brand reinforces that, helps kind of buffer you. It's another moat in the world of
another
AI.
moat. Yeah, to the dude wipes example, right? Like they make the butt wipes, but now they have different scents. They have pumpkin spice in the fall time. They have a veterans one. Like it's the same, but they're not. It's not a whole new product. It's spin dripped into different flavors, right?
Yep.
And to your point, if they have the unique formulation that now it's not a Lacroix because Lacroix and all the other sparkling waters are in the same category. Spin dripped is different.
Yep.
That's so powerful.
Yep. It's this thing
We're
we
all
like
trying to
all
solve for that.
CPG brands should strive for. Yeah.
And there's no playbook. What is the playbook?
Well, there is no playbook, and it also is a little bit like, just like there are different founders and different opportunities and different chances, like look at Olipop and Poppy.
Beautiful
One's
example.
prebiotics, one's probiotics. Do the consumers know
Know the
or
difference?
articulate? Yeah, probably
I was
not.
having that
And
conversation with
even
my aunt last night. She was asking me, "Have you had the poppy?" I was like, "Yeah, I have." Is that prebiotic or probiotic? It's something with the gut. It's better for you than Coke.
better for you than soda. But then now, like I think Trader Joe's has a probiotic or a prebiotic soda. Like it's copyable. And not to say that Dude Wipes isn't copyable, but like the brand is so strong that it makes it harder. And I think having this proliferation of prebiotic, probiotic, better for you sodas, and if you'd been to Expo West or Fancy Food or
Yeah,
any of these shows in the past 5 years, you saw how many brands were doing something very, very similar to that, and it just made the whole market kind of disintegrate. And yes, they had huge acquisitions. They still seem to be going strong, but I've read a few things that say, well, they're this era, consumers may already be on to the next thing. I mean,
interesting.
and then yeah, and yeah, I was gonna say the
Well,
brands then are
it's
also
beverages
themselves
though.
diluting their own markets because Coke and Pepsi are also putting probiotics and prebiotics in their own sodas. So
I was also just having this conversation, and I forget with who, just about and maybe it's a Gen Z or Gen Alpha thing, but like the drink category, just drinks in general, like even high hydration packets. It's a whole aisle of sugar masked as whatever that people are just putting in drinks and like it's this whole thing. So like we've been skirting around butt wipes and drinking the whole podcast. One kind of goes hand in hand, but like I find like you got your start in the beverage category. So what's your take? Like, where is the beverage category going?
every time it's almost like the New York real estate market. Every time I think it has reached like its total peak and total saturation, I also feel this way about the bar category.
Mm,
Every time I'm like, there's no way that there could be more entries or like a meaningful entry, someone does. And so I think
amazing.
it'll just keep going. But I think, you mentioned this earlier, kind of, the shakeup. I think there's going to continue to be shakeups, like an earthquake that like gets rid of kind of the loose rock
Yeah.
and and recenters it. So I do think in beverage there will start to be emerging leaders. I'm not sure why that category has so much innovation in it so consistently. And
It's
there's
hard to
so
keep
many
up.
variations, and being involved with BevNet, like you just see how many there are. And also the hardest part in beverage is that once the big guys get word of it, they create something similar in soft drinks, in beverage, in non-alcoholic, in alcoholic, and spirits.
Hmm.
So it's hard even for the little guys to really get a good foothold, and to make something uh,
And now with everything
profitable and
becoming
scalable.
right, like you have the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic, you have THC beverages coming onto the market. It's like we all we all need to drink water, and it's just like it just seems to be like just start a beverage brand. You'll become the next big thing. I don't even know. Like,
Well, and it's interesting out of all the beverage brands, and I was at the BevNet conference this year, so really got a front row seat to like so how other beverages. And I subscribe to BevNet, posts, and so I see all of the movement. And THE is interesting also with upcoming threats to regulations and how those
yeah,
brands are adapting their story. But I left that that conference with so many samples. So I was like, oh, this is so exciting. And some of them are still in my refrigerator because I'm having a hard time getting through them, because I do want water at some points during the day. I sometimes don't want something with adaptogens and probiotics and collagen
Right.
and
Right.
whatever else is in there, but I might not be the average consumer. But it is interesting to see the proliferation. The one standout from that conference was this, and I heard the founder speak at it, was the founder of Dirty Shirley, which was
Oh, Dirty
basically,
Shirley. Yeah.
yeah, he took a trend, again, perfectly timed trend, where people were taking Shirley Temples and spiking them. He made a whole brand, created a category just called Dirty Shirley, and in 2 years, he's scaled and sold the business. And and probably in a few
Incredible.
years, it won't be a thing anymore. And so, like, how do you do that? How do companies and, find the trend, be slightly ahead of it enough so that when people are looking for it, you're there and you're the first one there and you've created the category and own it. Sounds easier. I make it, it's
It
not
sounds
easy.
so easy, right?
Yeah,
Like,
that's all
but
you have to do. Come on, just do it. Just find the right
just
one.
find lightning in a bottle and bottle it up, and then there you go.
Yeah, and do it really quickly before anyone else does. Make sure you don't have that idea. I can't tell you how many times I think I have had the best idea ever. This happened to me recently where I was like, "Oh, I think I'm onto something." And then, like, I see it in the store, I get an email about something similar. So, like, ideas are commodities. It's really hard to come up with a thing that has that spark and that magic, and brand it correctly and get it out there.
Yeah, right. Idea to production to distribution to loyalty. Like, there's just so much. Oh, Lynn, we can talk forever, and I actually do want to ask you to come back because I think we're talking about beverage, but I also think that this is so relatable to the AI revolution that we're in, right? Like, because now, how many little products or little SaaS businesses are being uprooted by AI and making all these efficiencies? I think we have a whole conversation on just agent and AI and how that, from an innovation perspective, is the Wild West. Because I'm
Oh,
seeing it left and
absolutely.
right.
Yeah, and every day a new AI tool provider is coming out who's making some aspect of some part of the business supply chain, like, better, faster, more
Yeah,
efficient. So I'm seeing it too. So I would love to continue talking with you,
and
or
I
take
think
another time to do it, and hopefully your special guest star will come back too.
I would actually say, like, let's figure this because you're so close to me. Let's figure this out IRL, in real
I'd
life,
love that.
because that's obviously so different. And to some extent, it's so exciting. I'm sure you feel the same way. But on the other extent, it just makes me want to just throw my computer out the window, brew an espresso, and sit in the sun and be like, "You all figure this out. Call me when you need me." This is overwhelming.
Yeah, well, that's it's a different take than head sticking your head in the sand, but I know it's exciting. It's simultaneously exciting and overwhelming.
Yeah,
Uh, and you just have to, take it in the waves and say, like, here's what I can do today, and then
yeah.
do both. Take it all in, and
Especially
then for me, I go out and have a run and
there you
look at
go.
the world and say, like, all right, I can face this again tomorrow.
I feel like, as branders who have been in the space for decades now, mm, clients and a lot of people are looking to us with the responsibility to help them figure it out, right? Like, the world is kind of on our shoulders because as creative folk, like, in one sense, our business is kind of being taken away. On the other sense, there's a whole new world of opportunity ahead of us. And so, like we had someone in the chat say, collapses and periods of change open new opportunities that were previously hidden. Like, all of a sudden, things are just so in flux and changing, and it's exciting and overwhelming. So,
Mhm.
Lynn, I thank you for spending the afternoon or morning with us. I don't know what time it is where you are, but let everybody know how they can get in touch with you, where you live online, what your URLs are, all that good stuff.
Great. Well, absolutely find me on LinkedIn, Lynn Altman. You can find me there. Our website is brandnow.com. Should be pretty easy. And both of those ways are great ways to get in touch with me. Would love to hear from you.
Awesome. For more on us here at Branders, go to brandersmagazine.com. If you click on Branders Fest, we are open. Tickets are being sold. We have a couple great speakers being announced, I believe, next week. And so if you use code PACANZA15, you will get 15% off. And I will put that in all the notes and all that stuff. And for more on me, just Google Stephen Pacanza with the pizza emoji and the peace sign, and I should show up. I am the only Stephen Pacanza in the world. I definitely will show up. I've done that research.
And I will also be attending Branders Fest, and I cannot wait to see you there.
Yes. We are going to have a blast November 5th and 6th in New York City. Last year was so amazing. The weather was perfect, and we are hoping for the same here. And so for everyone else, catch us on the flip side. Subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Spotify, and we'll catch you later. Peace.
Bye.